janefinch.com.
All right, I'm Giorgio Mammoliti. I'm 57 years old. I moved to Jane and Finch when I was 3 years old. I have not left. I raised my family as well here. I've got 4 children, and I went to all the schools. I went to Westview, Oakdale, junior high at the time. I went to St. Jane Francis School and Stanley Public School. So I'm home in my area, bred in the area, and know the streets just like anybody else. I walk the same streets as anybody in the Jane and Finch corridor. I became active in politics in 1990 and have not left. It's been 28 years, wonderful years for me in politics, and I've held positions at Queen's Park as an MPP. I've been parliamentary assistant to 3 different ministers. And have spent most of my career at a municipal level, North York and then the megacity. And now with the changes coming, I've got 2 wards combined into 1, and I am running against another incumbent, and it's proving to be a very interesting race. Everyone brings different perspectives to the table. I'm not a socialist, and my opponent is. He brings to the table the status quo at Jane and Finch. I'm not into handing out welfare checks. I'm into people working for a living and earning the value and family values. I'm a huge proponent of family values and believe that much of our problems in our corridor at Jane and Finch, and we do have problems, is because we've lost our way. We've lost our family value way. I want to be able to work really hard to change that, and I've got a plan in place to do that this election. It is a hard-hitting plan, and I know that. It is about being real and talking about the real issues at Jane and Finch and the real issues in Ward 7. And the real issues are that we've got a wonderful, vibrant community that have so many ethnicities and wonderful, hardworking people that want to make it. But we also have a dark side to our community that nobody wants to talk about, except me. And it's time we talk about it, because that dark side has hit our streets and our parks. The gunshots that you hear are there for a reason. And it's time for us to talk about those reasons. And it's about family values. It's about the lack of parenting. It's about too much social housing in one community and how we deal with it. For me, we have a short-term plan and a long-term plan that I want to bring forward to everyone's attention. If elected, I will make sure that the police are given the resources that they lost over the last few years, bring them forward some support at a municipal level so that they can do their job and make the streets safer for you as residents in this area. And I also want to talk about the darkness, which is, in my opinion, a very large segment of Jane and Finch, about 60% that are on welfare right now, are in our social housing units. Almost 5 generations have lived in the social housing units. And they're not going anywhere unless we talk about it and deal with it. I want to deal with it in a long-term sense because that's how we have to deal with this. We have got acres and acres, hundreds of acres of land that are government-owned and that are segregated to only the poor. Segregation has not worked for Jane and Finch. This human experiment that has lasted 50 years at Jane and Finch does not work, and we need to realize that. I want to tear it down. I want to tear it down for the benefit of the tenants, because they're not getting anywhere near the form of housing that they should if they're poor and need assistance from government. And I want to do it for the people around the social housing units that are now starting to see the issue of 50 years of segregation and what that's caused with children without fathers, without mothers, without family, without a family unit that they're crying now. They're crying out with their gun in the hand, and they're angry. They've grown up angry, and we need to realize that. And we have to do a much better job of taking care of those children. My way of doing that is to hit the 6th generation of child and mentor that child so that they're not necessarily growing up in social housing. Not the way it is. The way it is just segregated housing. The only heroes that they see are drug dealers. The only economy that exists in our social housing units are drug dealers. And those drug dealers have made their way into the units and are now running social housing. It's not the landlord anymore running it. It is the drug dealers. They're paying everybody off. And that's why people are upset at me, because they don't want that flow of money to stop. And I want to talk about it. And the only real way to save the Jane and Finch corridor from the social issues that have plagued us are for us to realize that we do need to knock it down and build it in the form of a mix. Bring the private sector in. Start talking about how the private sector could actually rebuild and create jobs for those children as they're growing up as well. And they'll be much happier. I'm Italian and was born here, but I see myself as an Italian Canadian with all the values that my family's brought to the table. Along with me, like I said earlier, we've got so many wonderful ethnicities, and the Vietnamese community stands out for me. There's 6,000 of them in the Jane and Finch corridor right now. 6,000 Vietnamese. And it's time the government recognized them. They're hardworking people. They typically work really hard and long hours during the day and come home at 7 or 8 at night. Some of them just want to be able to raise their family in Canada, in Toronto, and at Jane and Finch. They've decided to settle. So now it's time for somebody to say to them, I'm here to help you. And as a municipal politician, I am going to support their efforts into bringing forward a cultural center that they deserve. For anybody that understands the history of how they got here and why they got here and why they struggled to get here, I would encourage anyone that doesn't understand it to perhaps read a little bit, because it has been a struggle. And they deserve a cultural center to start talking about their struggles in getting here. What happened? What happened at home? How was it getting here? Was it that difficult? And I know a lot of them struggled just to get here. Let them tell the story the way they see it through a cultural center. I also envision at the same location a seniors' home for them, a place where their family members can go and get taken care of when they get older. Same thing that we're doing with many other of our cultural groups and our ethnic groups. The Italian community is a prime example of it. Not only have we given resources to the Italian community this way, but we've done it by region. You know, there's a number of different cultural groups and seniors' homes and places that service the Italians based on regions of where they've lived in Italy. So I just think it's the right thing to do, it's the fair thing to do, and why not do it at Jane and Finch? I want to do it, and I want to do it fast. I'm working with a group of Vietnamese that are just wonderful entrepreneurs, artists. They're social workers. They're a group of professionals that understand how quick we can do this if we do it together. So that is something that I am excited about, because it gives me some happiness to know that the Vietnamese are finally trusting government here. And I'm going to be the first one to say this, I think, that it's been a while for me anyway, to have learned that it hasn't been easy for the Vietnamese to even trust a councillor or an MPP or an MP, just based on their own history. And so I'm happy to see the smiles on their faces when I walk up to their door and show them the leaflet that says, you're going to have a place of your own. And that to me speaks volumes. And I'm very proud of representing this community, because they are hardworking people. And they're not asking anybody for anything. They're doing it on their own. And that's what makes me proud of them. I want everybody to vote on October 22nd for experience, I have it, 28 years of it. I want someone to vote for a politician that has lived in this community all of his life, is born and bred in this pocket. I want somebody to vote for me because they trust me and they trust my values and they trust how hard I actually work. I want someone to vote for me because I'm speaking the truth, and sometimes when you speak the truth, people want to attack you. I want someone to vote for me because I am going to make a significant change in the Jane and Finch corridor, a facelift. The economy is going to get better, revitalize this whole pocket. I want someone to vote for me because I'm going to bring resources back to the police department. And I want the vote because I want a subway on Finch Avenue. I don't want to settle with a train down the middle of the road. The former councillor at Jane and Finch didn't even have a public meeting to talk about the train in the middle of the road. Didn't want to talk about the fact that they want to park trains across the street from Yorkgate Mall. He knew about this, he approved it, he pushed it through without consultation. I want to stop that from happening and have a subway allocated to the Finch corridor. That's something we deserve. We deserve the same things other people in the city are getting, and that's because we're taxpayers. On October 22nd, please vote for Giorgio Mammoliti.